Yo, what's going on, Ian? Coach Vic here. Hey, man, just want to say Merry Christmas, late Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year to you and your family. I really appreciate you reaching out, asking for help and advice. I'd be glad to help you, give you a few pointers. So I'm not sure if you are purposely trying to mimic Cody Bellinger, but when I first saw this clip of you, I was like, oh man, it looks like he's trying to mimic Cody Bellinger. A lot of resemblances in your stance and your setup. So I just wanted to point out a couple things with this, a couple differences. So there's nothing wrong with taking an upright stance approach. I mean, that is totally up to you. I like to consider the stance somewhat of like your own style, right? You'll see many major leaguers and many hitters have very different, unique ways in their stance, right? But once they initiate the swing, once they get that front foot down and how they attack the ball, you're going to see all pro hitters in a very, very similar, if not identical, positions. Okay, so that being said, this swing obviously works very well for Bellinger. It's comfortable. It allows him to get into the proper positioning that is required for him to absolutely hammer the ball on a very, very consistent basis and have huge output numbers. Okay. First things first, this is you hitting in the cage. I've never seen you hit. I mean, you could be the greatest hitter in the world with this swing right here, and I would not be able to tell simply by just watching this little clip, right? I mean, I just want you to understand, and from my perspective, is that you don't need to have perfect mechanics to be a great hitter, right? There's a lot of things that go into being a great hitter. Pitch selection, right? Your mentality, your mindset, your mental approach at the plate is really more important than mechanics. You know, you can have not perfect mechanics and be a great hitter. There are many people that are in that situation where they are better hitters than people with perfect swings. So that being said, I'm not going to totally pick apart here. I don't get too analytical when it comes to the swing. I like to keep it as simple as possible and just make sure you're doing the most important key points of the swing, because we want to keep it as simple as possible. You probably already know by now, the more you are thinking at the plate, the more difficult it is. It slows you down. You get in your head. You start guessing what pitches are coming. You know, we're swinging at. I've done this many, many times. 10 years of professional baseball, I'd get into slumps so bad I couldn't hit the side of a barn, and then all of a sudden something would happen and click, and then boom, I can't miss, and I'm lights out. And it was because I was thinking too much. I was thinking about my past at bats. I was thinking about my batting average. I was thinking about, you name it. I probably thought about it at the plate. And one thing was for sure, it did not work. When my mind was clear, no mechanics on my mind, nothing on my mind, is when I was allowed to even start to tap into my potential as a hitter, and it's going to be the same for you. Anyways, talk too much. Let's get into this. So just one thing I notice here with Cody Bellinger, or with your swing, from this high point, okay, typically most pro hitters, almost all, are going to have a clear negative movement. Okay, so, and what I mean by that, which if you don't know, is be a negative, in this case being backwards towards, any movement backwards towards the catcher. Of course, positive would be the opposite, be movement towards the pitcher. So most pro hitters are going to have some form of a negative movement. Most. Just so happens that Bellinger's one that doesn't have much of a negative movement. He's got the upper body. You can definitely see, let me get the right pointer here. You can definitely see a negative move with his upper half here, right? It's not so much a negative move even because his body starts to move forward too, so he's kind of like moving away from his hands, but then he kind of brings the hands down, has a little bit of a barrel tip forward as that elbow kind of points up and back. Okay, so that's his negative move. And so, like I'll admit, Cody Bellinger is kind of a very unique case. He does a lot of things that are a bit different than other hitters. I do not teach this style, right? I wouldn't even know how to teach this style, to be honest with you. But I do know that a negative move is going to give you, of course, some more power, being able to create some separation. If you don't know what separation is, it's the relationship between your hips and your shoulders. Okay, so the hips going slightly before the shoulders go is creating separation, and it's for pitchers, it's the same thing. The hardest throwing pitchers are going to have higher levels of separation between their hips and their shoulders. So anyways, yours is very subtle. Not a whole lot of movement, right? Kind of a dip, kind of a drop. We don't really get our barrel up. That's one thing I notice. As you go into your stride forward, the barrel, we don't really get that. Have you ever heard the knob to the catcher? It gets there, but it's a bit late. And so that's one thing that I noticed. You don't have a lot of bat movement before. And what I mean by movement is just like a little bit of a tip. If you watch Bellinger, see how his bat barrel tips? Kind of goes from the back of his head to kind of over his head. This front elbow of his right here kind of points back towards the catcher and kind of down towards his back hip a little bit, right? You see that gives a little bit of a barrel tip over his head and gets it slotted in the right position so that when his front foot hits, so he's already going, when that front foot hits, he's on the proper plane, and all he needs to do is stay connected and rotate to the ball, explode to the ball. So this is a minor thing, but if one day we ever work together, something we can definitely talk about, because that's a big part of your rhythm and timing. And timing and rhythm is really a huge component of hitting. Again, if you don't have proper timing and rhythm, your mechanics are irrelevant. So that's one thing. So just not a whole lot. I don't see a whole lot of negative movement with you. And like I said, if you're trying to mimic Bellinger, he's a tough one. He's a tough one that I don't necessarily recommend mimicking someone like this, because you got to remember Cody Bellinger's swing was an evolution, right? It evolved into that swing. Cody Bellinger, more than likely, I'm just taking a guess here, I don't know for sure, but I'm willing to bet that his swing in Little League was not exactly like this, that it was a little bit different. Maybe he did things a little more traditionally, but eventually he evolved over time as he advanced in his career and his abilities, that he was able to find what works for him. And that is the goal here, is to help you find what works for you. So that's what the lower half. If you see it, instantly, the other thing is your first movement is forward, right? So there's no negative move, we're a little stiff with the legs, right? You're a little bit vertical here as you go forward. It's not putting us in a very athletic position. You'll see Bellinger. Okay, well, Bellinger's upright, yes, but as soon as he starts to go forward, he starts to sit. You see how he starts to sit? It's almost like he's sitting on a stool. And so, if we're straight up and down, we're not athletic. If we're too wide, we're also unathletic. All right, so we need to find that sweet spot. So you go from a very upright position, stiff-legged, and you kind of maintain that stiff leg all the way to your foot plant. So you're very wide here. You start from a very narrow and end up very wide. It's good in the sense that you're generating some forward momentum, but there's not adjustability. And if you don't know what I mean by that, it's basically being able to adjust within your swing to varying pitch speeds, and be able to have timing and rhythm with the pitcher. The pitcher on the mound has a leg kick. The pitcher on the mound reaches back and comes forward to deliver the pitch. If we aren't doing that same kind of movement, right, as the pitcher reaches back, if we're not reaching back, we're not going to have much adjustability to react to different pitches, speeds, and locations, if we're kind of just going one speed forward, right, without going backwards first. So what I'm going to do is, after this video, sorry if it's getting a little long, but after this video I'm going to do another video with another swing of yours that I saw, and I'm going to show you some good things that I saw in another video. Not that this swing isn't good, don't get me wrong, but there's just some things as far as the rhythm, the timing, the rhythm, that I'm seeing that could maybe hurt in consistency. The other thing is also your head movement. You drop quite a bit when you get into contact. So look at where your head is from where you started and where you stopped. So your eyes are in your head. If your head is moving up and down too much, it changes the eyesight, the plane of the ball, and can ultimately affect your quality and your consistency of contact. If you look at Bellinger's head all the way to contact, oh, too far, all the way to contact, you'll see how much less movement, less distance the head has traveled. Sure, it dropped a little bit, but it was a controlled drop. You are kind of rushing forward, in my opinion, and you go from such a vertical stance to a very wide launch position and contact point that it can affect your ability to, like I said, track the ball. Okay, so that's one thing. And to go back again on the stride length, you see Bellinger's pretty narrow. He starts narrow, but he ends relatively narrow also, so he maintains his athleticism through his swing. You see, like I said, if we're too upright, if our legs are straight, we're not very athletic. Whether they're right under us or they're way spread out, we're not athletic. So you see Cody Bellinger does such a good job getting down, sitting into that athletic position. Now his legs are ready to take, ready on foot plant. He's ready to initiate those hips and get them rotating. He becomes more athletic as soon as he starts his movement forward. Whereas you kind of maintain a little stiffness in the lower half and stride way out, kind of fast. And there's just not a whole lot of adjustability there. Being so wide, you lose your torque, your hip rotation. So anyways, I don't want to make this video too long. There's just a couple things I wanted to point out here. I'm going to send you a second video after this, so watch out for that, okay?